How's it going, history buffs? Today we're talking about the spread of Islam and the Eastern Roman Empire. But I want to talk about how Christians actually helped to spread Islam. So the first thing you have to understand is that Christianity in antiquity and the early medieval period tried to be truly universal, in the sense that they wanted all Christians to believe the same thing and to have the same leaders. So in the Byzantine Empire, or the Eastern Roman Empire, this meant the disenfranchisement of alternative types of Christianity, and they were very popular in the Eastern Roman Empire. So in the 4th century, for example, you have the Council of Nicaea in 325, which was led by Constantine. The council was called to debate theological issues, for example, whether Christ was an eternal figure who is synonymous with God, or whether he was created by God as his son, what it means to be his son, and other really confusing issues that the Bible doesn't really do much to clarify. But they became really important for Christians to understand as part of their identity and sort of knowing what exactly they believed in. So councils like the Council of Nicaea and later examples like the Council of Chalcedon were called in order to bring church leaders together to debate and solve these issues in a way that would allow all Christians to be members of the same community. The problem is that these were never exactly successful. There were always going to be Christians, and there always are Christians who disagreed with them. So what ends up happening is the government, Constantine and his successors as Roman emperors, would use the powers of the state, particularly legal force and military force, to ensure that all Christians would follow the same examples and would acknowledge the church in Constantinople or the church in Rome as the proper authority. So this meant that a lot of Christians become disenfranchised, and in the readings for this week, if you choose the readings on Islam, you'll see a group of Coptic Christians who are actually happy that Arab soldiers are taking over Alexandria. Minority sects of Christians, Christians who believed other things about the Bible or about Jesus or about God, would be persecuted by the emperor, and their property would be confiscated and they would be forced to worship in private, and they began to refuse to acknowledge the authority of the emperor, and particularly the authority of the Patriarch of Constantinople. These minority groups were actually treated better under Islam than they were under the Byzantine emperors. Islam considered all Christians the same, whether they were Monophysite, Arian, Orthodox, Roman Catholic. It was all the same to the Arabs. It was all the same to Islam, and they all received the treatment of people of the book. That meant they were allowed to practice their religion, but they had to pay higher tax rates, they had to worship in private, they couldn't proselytize or do any missionary service, but they were still allowed to be Christians, and they still got to keep their property. Unlike under Constantinople, where they were forced to alienate their property and lose a lot of rights along with their public rights. So in a lot of ways, the heavy-handedness of Constantinople actually allowed Islam to spread easily throughout Africa, particularly as a military and imperial force, and secondarily as a religion. It became more appealing to convert because Islam gave them material reasons to convert, as opposed to Orthodoxy, which pretty much forced itself on them through the force of arms. So as you do your readings for this week, just consider the choices that Constantinople made that affected its empire, whether it's both in the expansion throughout Italy and Africa under Justinian, which you'll read about in the Procopius reading, or whether it's the failed public policy that allowed Islam to spread in North Africa, as you'll see in your Islam reading. And I'll see you in discussion.